One.
Good afternoon. Today I'll be presenting about Punch and Judy puppetry. Just to go over a little bit, I'll start with some history. History of Punch and Judy. Punch and Judy shows have its roots in the 16th century Italian commedia dell'arte. Punch is originally derived from the Napoleon stock character, Pulcinella, which was then transcribed to Punchinello. He is a manifestation of the Lord of Misrule and a jester or trickster who is very deeply rooted in mythologies. Punch's wife, Judy, originally was originally called Joan. The figure who later became Mr. Punch was first recorded in appearance in England, May 9th, 1662, which is traditionally in the UK reckoned as Punch's birthday. The reason why this is in the UK is because the earliest Punch and Judy shows were in southern seaside Britain in the late 17th century to early 18th century, especially when there was a lot of industrialization. The Industrial Revolution happened in England, and so people were working very long hours. There were no labor laws, and people needed something to be able to come home to. It's just like when we work a long day, we want to be able to come home, sit down on the couch, watch some TV, have some coffee, or do something like that. Now, Punch and Judy shows are puppets. Traditionally, when you think of a puppet show, you may think of the big puppet booth with the white and red striped cloth. Now, this is most likely because on the seaside, a lot of places use striped cloths. Even when you go today to resort beaches, you'll see blue and white striped towels. And red and white stripes were a fairly cheap cloth back then. This is why a lot of times when you think of puppet booths, you think of the striped cloth, and this comes from Punch and Judy. A lot of the early traveling Punch and Judy stands were made out of this cloth. In the 18th century and the early 19th century, Punch and Judy became glove puppets. They were originally marionettes, which were controlled by strings. But once became glove puppets, this was a lot easier to make, obviously. You didn't have to spend money on the string. And they were really made with whatever inexpensive cloth you could find. If it was cheap, it was usable, because people didn't have a lot of money back in this time and day. Now, wherever the puppet show took place, whether, if it's in the streets, it was usually an okay puppet show. It wasn't the best. But in gaudier affairs, such as Christmas, and particularly the ones indoor, performed for either royalty or very wealthy people, they were made out of nicer materials, nicer puppets, better sounding swazzles. While I'm on the topic of swazzles are a little piece that you put in your mouth for the voice of Punch, and it really tones up your voice and makes it a very high-pitched type buzzing voice. Unfortunately, I do not have one of those today. They're a very easy choking hazard. People have swallowed them and sounded like Punch for a couple days before. Now, in the 20th century, the red and white striped puppet booths came into play, as I said. and this was on the English seaside, and it mostly came into play in the summer holiday events, especially on the beaches, and the striped cloth is still a common covering. So we'll now move on to the topic of the characters. So all the characters by list, the most common ones are Mr. Punch, Judy, the baby, the constable, Joey the clown, the crocodile, the skeleton, and the doctor. I will show you a picture of Mr. Punch and Miss Judy in a second. The baby is usually a piece of cloth bundle that is just wrapped up very tightly. There's nothing really inside of it. The constable is a policeman in simpler terms. If you're not from somewhere that was colonized by the British, you might not know what that is. Joey the clown, he dresses in the traditional jester uniform. Most common place you see that nowadays would be in Batman for Harley Quinn. You have the crocodile. Now the crocodile is a little bit interesting. I don't know, we think it comes from the colonized parts that Britain colonized, because they don't have crocodiles in the UK or anywhere around there. The only place where you can find crocodiles is North America and Australia. And these are it's very odd and very strange that that would be in there, but obviously it's something that's brought back maybe from spice trade, slave trade, different things like that. Doctor, he usually comes in and checks on Punch, make sure he's feeling good. The skeleton kind of resembles Death, kind of a hysterical skeleton type. And then some of the more occasional characters would be Toby the dog, the ghost, the lawyer, Hector the horse, Pretty Polly, the hangman, aka Jack Ketch, the devil, the beetle, Jim Crow, aka the black man, Mr. Saramoch, the servant, and the blind man. These are all characters that you really don't see too often, especially because Punch and Judy has kind of fallen out of touch with most of the world, and you'll occasionally see them if you go to a very professional Punch and Judy show. As you can see right here, you have Mr. Punch wearing kind of a jester uniform type deal, and Miss Judy wearing normal, everyday, kind of 19th century, a little bit wealthier attire than someone, probably middle, high class. And the jester uniform, as you can see, is a weird stripe type thing, little bells on the shoes, bells on the hat sometimes. And if you do recognize it, it does kind of look like Harley Quinn's uniform from Batman. These puppets right here are made with a plaster facing, and they are painted over. They use little razors to kind of put little scratches in there, sandpaper and razors, so that the paint would stick to the plaster easily. And the way I explored this technique was when I made puppets like this for a different class, and eventually I gave those puppets away, sadly enough. But it is a very interesting technique to use, and a lot of people use it when making something with plastic, so that the paint would stick to the plastic. So a typical show. A typical Punch and Judy show is 3 to 5 minutes long. Not very long. It's really slapstick comedy that kind of hits you in the face. Usually it will involve the arrival of Punch and Judy first, kind of hugging and kissing and dancing. Then Mr. Punch is going to stay home, and Judy requests him to look after the baby. Once Judy leaves, Mr. Punch cannot complete his duties by looking after the baby, and either drops it off the stage or even drops it in a meat grinder into a sausage maker.
Yeah.
And after this is usually when the crocodile comes into play. The crocodile will come and eat the sausages of baby. And then Judy comes home and asks where the baby is, and she finds out, oh, baby's lost. She goes out, grabs a stick, and they start beating each other with sticks. Constable shows up in the mayhem, and due to all the commotion, he ends up getting felled by Punch. And really after this, it's just kind of slapstick, anything goes. Different characters show up, especially the doctor will show up to check on the constable and Mr. Punch. And it was a really interesting topic to choose to do this. Thank you.